Welcome, thanks for joining me, astrologer Patrick Arundell, for your in-depth weekly astrology overview for week commencing the 29th of April. And what a week it's going to be. Mars returns to Aries, Venus returns to Taurus, the two signs that they rule, but also Pluto is going to be slamming on the brakes in a retrograde which will last 5 months. I'm going to give you an overview from a collective perspective, but please stay with me. I will go through each of the 12 zodiac signs from Aries to Pisces and give you a flavour of what you can expect in terms of your ascendant, sun or the moon. New to my channel, it's great to have your company. This is very much a community. If you have any thoughts, please share them. If you're a returning visitor, your views and interactions are truly appreciated. If you are yet to subscribe to my channel, please click on the bell notification symbol because every time I drop a video, you will get an alert. You can also get your free daily written horoscope from me fired to your device each morning. And to do that, just click on the link below or go to www.patrickarundell.com/subscribe. I'm also a consultant astrologer. If you'd like to have a one-to-one with me, please explore what other people have found when they've had a reading with me. You can see my testimonials below. I don't edit these. As they come in, they go onto my website as is. So on the screen now, I'm showing the event chart. We can see that the sun is at 9 degrees and 10 minutes in the sign of Taurus, but we have the moon in another earth sign of Capricorn at 7 degrees and 54, and they're collaborating really well. So that's good. The balance of the drive and the determination the sun gives us and the more receptive, protective energies of the moon are well aligned. But you'll also see that Mars, which is going to be moving on Tuesday back into Aries for 6 weeks, is just cresting into a conjunction with Neptune, which will become exact later on Monday. Now Mars, of course, is very much about passion, determination, drive, instant gratification, can be to do with anger, and it can be where we're going to react in a more warrior-like way. But in a conjunction with Neptune, those energies are in some ways watered down. So it's possible over the last few days that many of us have felt actually a bit demotivated. The passion of Mars is in some ways being affected by the water of Neptune. So we could start this week feeling that things are a little bit sluggish. But also on Monday, Venus, the planet of relating, but also of money, self-worth and our values, returns to her other zodiac sign she rules of Taurus. She also rules Libra. But in Taurus, it's great for really thinking about the things that we are drawn to aesthetically. So if you're a creative, you enjoy the arts, or you enjoy good food, or want to improve your financial situation, Venus gives a good opportunity over the next few weeks, but it is immediately met in a square by Pluto. If there's any politics around a relationship, professional or personal, they're likely to show right at the start of this week. And because Mars is in that alignment with Neptune, if any deception's in the mix, or someone's being dishonest, or at least not owning quite as much as they could do, that can be an issue. But as I mentioned before, Pluto on Thursday is going to be going into a retrograde. That's going to last through to the 14th of October, but it will invert back into the sign of Capricorn at the start of September. But initially it is in Aquarius. But despite that retrograde on Tuesday, as Mars powers back into Aries, it does forge a once-in-a-lifetime link to Pluto. When these two get together, we're talking about willpower central. And because Mars leaving Pisces liberates it from that sluggish energy that Neptune has been applying, the furnace, the fire of the sign of Aries really can become much more obvious by Tuesday. But because of the link to Pluto, that's to do with transformation. So if something has been coming to an end in our situations, That may have been flagged by Mars's conjunction with Neptune, but now we have an opportunity to recreate, to invigorate, to incarnate Pluto, something to do with our future, and take the first but very powerful steps forwards into that bright possibility. So the fact that Pluto does go retrograde is an issue in terms of the wider astrology, but I feel that Mars alliance with Pluto is so enabling. So it gives us an opportunity to shrug off some of the sluggishness that Mars has created in the previous 6 weeks since it moved into Pisces on the 23rd of March. But also this week, Mercury in Aries is forging a very positive link to Saturn in Pisces. It's a semi-sextile, suggesting that if we continue to listen to our instincts but structure what we do with them in a practical way, Saturn and the energy that was blocked with Mercury's retrograde, it's not completely dissipated because it won't come out of its post-retrograde shadow until the 13th of May. But I feel just generally for all of us, it's almost like we're waking up from something. We know that the combination between Jupiter and Uranus was a massive spark of what we can expect over the next 14 years. And Jupiter and Uranus are still in touch for the first 9 days of May within 3 degrees. So that energy of change and expansion, but also disruption, is certainly still in the mix. But I think essentially, because Mars was through Pisces those 6 weeks, it obviously connected with Saturn, which was difficult, and then with Neptune. What we're going to see as this week goes on is greater momentum, greater thrust. We can really get in touch with what our higher values are, Pluto in Aquarius, but find the energy and the determination and the grit to shake off any sluggishness we've had and really take some giant steps forwards. If you'd like to ascend above the following zodiac forecast and embrace the power of serious astrology, if you give me 3 pieces of personal birth data of time, date and place of birth, I can produce for you your life roadmap report. This will give you searing insights into what has created your journey so far, but a much more intimate understanding of the influences can help you to be much more productive going forwards. In my special package, you can also get your 12 months transits, the moving planets in the sky interacting with your core natal chart. Now, if you know your natal chart pretty well and you know what's going on in terms of the transits, why not check out my Draconic package? Draconic is soul, karmic astrology. It's very much to do with the North Node. It's the energy we bring into our lives when we're born. But the natal chart is taking the roots of the Draconic chart and seeing our life force develop like a tree, and then through our efforts in this lifetime we create the output, which is the fruit. But if you really like to explore that Draconic principle, please check out the link below for that too. That also in my special package has 30% off. Welcome Aries to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 29th of April for the Ascendant, Sun or the Moon. On the screen now I'm showing your event chart. Now the big takeout is the position of your ruler Mars. It's really exciting that on Tuesday it moves back into your sign for 6 weeks. But the last 6 weeks, Mars has been going through a very psychological part of your situation, just as you had the energy pulsating around in your sign through the solar eclipse, through Chiron, through Mercury's and its retrograde, and of course through the North Node. So all those energies were asking you to step into the present or plan your future, be very enterprising. But Mars being in your 12th house may have seen you at times not quite have all the energy and the vitality to make those plans fly in the way you'd perfectly like. So it's been a bit mixed, and also perhaps there's been a lot of thinking or connections around situations to do with your past. Your emotions may have been a little bit up and down as well. And of course, when Mars connected with Saturn, that was quite complex. Now at the start of this week, the exact conjunction with Neptune can be tricky. But also, perhaps it's rather it's rather apt in a way, because it's a kind of summons up point for everything you've been through since March the 23rd, and Mars went into Pisces. So it's perhaps encouraged you in some ways to become more in touch with your psychological and emotional needs. But by Tuesday, you're really going to feel a furnace of energy which may have been missing. But of course on Monday we also have Venus arriving in Taurus. So Venus rules two zodiac signs, Taurus and Libra, Mars as well, your sign and Scorpio. But Venus for you going into Taurus is very good for your finances. So if you have been working on something in recent times, and maybe with Mercury's retrograde it didn't seem to be shaping up at quite the speed you wanted, some good news can happen this week. But what might be a little bit more complex could be around a friendship. Because of Pluto applying in a square to Venus, you could have a very different viewpoint to someone you get on well with. It could be a partner, but it could be somebody else. And it may be over a point of principle, of value, or money. Also, in a romantic context, Venus moving into your second house is very sensual, but basically Pluto's saying, what do you want from your future? And if your future is starting to evolve in a different way in your thinking, then perhaps the square with Venus can create a point which does need to be looked at. And I think that Mars escaping from the trap of the 12th house, it's almost been like a dungeon for you, and moving into your own sign and ironically forging an amazing link to Pluto really gives you a lot of encouragement to break free from what's not serving your greater good. Now ironically on Thursday Pluto goes into retrograde, which will last for over 5 months. And that is going to give you a lot of food for thought about those future plans, but also your work, particularly from the start of September, when Pluto inverts back into Capricorn for one last time. But this week also sees Mercury in your sign, having emerged from its retrograde, forge a very stable link with Saturn. So the lessons that Mars helped you to learn, perhaps using past skills, experiences and contacts, but adapting them into the situation you have now, can really come back to you. And of course, the conjunction between Jupiter and Uranus, which peaked on the 21st, they're still very active within 3 degrees right through this week. So I think you can be very enterprising with money. The only area that gets tricky is shared finances, or around a friendship or association where maybe you feel a bit used, or someone's in some ways, I don't know, you could just feel a sense that if someone's not really respecting what you bring to a situation, that could really jar with you. But your desire to really cut a thrust and escape from some of the sloth of recent weeks where your physical vitality may have been low at times, I think you're really going to come back to life and be a lot more dynamic this week, and really start to demonstrate to people that where you've got a goal or an ambition or an enthusiasm or an interest that really is important to you, you can take a giant step forwards in a very confident way. It's been a real pleasure being with you, Aries. If you've yet to subscribe, please do so now, but have a great week and take care for now. Welcome Taurus to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 29th of April for the ascendant, the sun or the moon. On the screen now, I'm showing the event chart right at the start of the week. Now there's quite a few big takeouts, not least that the sun in your sign forges a great link with the moon. When these two are relating well to one another, it gives us a balance. So the sun in your sign is asking you to direct your energies towards your individual hopes and your creativity. But the moon in the 9th house is just saying, be open-minded about what you discover this week. Now you can see that Venus, your ruler, is tucked up still in your 12th house. And because Mercury has been in retrograde in that area, and we've had the total solar eclipse, I feel that there has been a very powerful period for you of late around emotions, around your psychological welfare, but also about where you really belong, or who's really for you. And if there have been some separations or even disappointments or a lack of communication when you've been going through something quite delicate, Venus coming into your sign later on Monday is going to rebirth you in a way, particularly around your sense of attractiveness. So it's a rare Taurus that doesn't appreciate good things and have really good taste, but that part of your nature will be emphasized over the next few weeks. But also, if you're a maker or a creative, that also is going to be enhanced, which is really good news. Now, of course, Mars has been making its way through your sector of friendship and future plans since the 23rd of March. And as we come into this week, it too is nearing the end of its journey in the sign of Pisces, but is very close to Neptune. If you are connecting to a group of people or a particular person, or you're demonstrating your flair to people, you can really capture their imagination, a mixture of your drive but also your appreciation of form and function is going to be something that's really notable. But later on Tuesday, Mars, like Venus, relocates, this time into Aries. So Venus moves into your sign, and it's great to give yourself some kind of makeover or change things up around your personal appearance, but also focus on your talents. But Mars moving into the 12th house to replace Venus suggests that when it comes to understanding some of the parts of your existence that maybe you need to leave behind may not be completely at an end. And of course, because the North Node is going to be in your 12th house through to the 11th of January 2025, there may be a sense that some things are coming to a close, but that doesn't mean to say that other things can't be taking shape and be very dynamic. The issue with Mars in the 12th house, however, is that if you're someone who finds it difficult to be angry externally because you don't want to rock the boat, or because you're placid, or there are things that have happened in your past which you've kept to yourself, Mars in the 12th house can have a tendency to rake things up. So to be honest, through to the middle of June, there may be some old issues that you thought were settled, could be aroused and in an unpredictable way at times. So Mars moving through the 12th house can be quite complex. The great thing about Mars moving through the 12th house, the desire to manifest our ego, which is what Mars is about, suggests that your appreciation of healing, of nurture, of spirituality and psychology is really going to be enhanced. And if you are someone who uses those skills quite actively, then you can really flourish with Mars's help over those next 6 weeks. Now, of course, in April, we did have that wonderful connection between Uranus and Jupiter. And as we come into this new week, they're pretty close together still, through to the 9th of May, within 3 degrees. But Jupiter is a planet that's very much to do with enterprise, and Uranus can push us to be a little bit more inventive. Yet you've got Pluto at the top of your chart in an area which is very much to do with convention, the 10th house. So as much as Venus moving into your sign, joining up with the Sun, the path of fortune, Uranus and Jupiter can really encourage you to cut a path very much using your individual talents. Because Venus clashes with Pluto, you may experience somebody who doesn't necessarily want you to use your individuality, but particularly around your work. But also it could be the case that if you are a very talented person when it comes to the arts and flair, that you may find yourself having to talk to an agency for funding, getting a decision on something you want to do, and you may need to interact with someone quite influential who could be a bit difficult and a bit hard to read. Pluto often keeps things out of sight. So just be aware there could be a little bit of push and pull, but that also could show itself around a relationship situation. If you are in a relationship of any kind, whether it's with a family member, a friend, a colleague, or in a romantic context, where it feels that the other person always needs to hold the upper hand over you. That's something that could really rankle with you. And maybe Mars moving into your 12th house is going to see you get in touch with things that in the past maybe you've put to one side, and actually start to own them a little bit more and express more outwardly any frustration you have. But that is going to be the lesson, I feel, of Mars over the next 6 weeks. So a bit of a tussle between Venus and Pluto, but certainly a great opportunity for you to start showcasing your talents this week and your flair. And there could be someone that you can really connect well with. But Mars going into the 12th house does suggest if there are still some people around you that you can't absolutely rely upon, they will need to be weeded out over the period of time through to the middle of June. It's been a real pleasure being with you, Taurus. If you've yet to do so, please sub to the channel, but I hope you have a great week and take care. Welcome, Gemini, to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 29th of April for the Ascendant, Sun or the Moon. On the screen now, I'm showing the event chart. Mercury, your ruler, out of retrograde, forges a great link to Saturn. It's a semi-sextile, which is quite subtle. So Mercury's in the part of your situation and very close to the North Node, as you can see. That's how you connect to others. So your network, your friendships, your interest in terms of what really inspires you, that actually can be important to your professional interactions too. Saturn in the 10th house is very much about responsibilities and obligations. You've had Mars there since the 23rd of March. At times it's given you extra vitality to strut your stuff and be more assertive. At other times maybe it's created some challenges, particularly when it merged with Saturn. And as you can see at the start of this week, it's merging with Neptune, which potentially is complex. Around your professional situation, if you are having a meeting on Monday and you're not quite sure how this will play out, I think one of the things with Neptune and Mars is that it is true that distortion could be in the mix. So do keep your guard up a little bit. But on Tuesday, Mars moves into your sector of the future and forges a once-in-a-lifetime link with Pluto in Aquarius, which of course is your sister air sign. So you are going to emerge from something that may seem a little bit of a fudge, a bit confused at the start of this week, and you can get your rhythm going. Now Venus, the planet of relating, does move home to Taurus on Monday and clashes with Pluto. What does that mean? Well, Pluto's in the part of your situation to do with higher knowledge, philosophy, travel, the truth of situations, if you like. And because Venus goes into a square, if there is a relationship which has some parts of it which are a bit political, or maybe someone's not being completely upfront or revealing exactly how they feel, Pluto could tease out into the open what the issue is. But if you do find that someone's being very, very charming towards you, perhaps in quite subtle ways, you need to analyse what their motive is. But with Venus moving into the sign of Taurus, along with the parts of fortune, the Sun, Uranus and Jupiter, that gives you a lot of energy in your 12th house, which is very much to do with reflection. And it can also be to do with working out who's really for us and who's not. And that might be what the Venus-Pluto square is about. You could have a flash of insight around someone's integrity, someone's loyalty. Unfortunately, that is possible. But because Mars moves into such a dynamic area, there's another part of your situation and your energies which can really be opened up. And the thing with 12th house energy, although it can expose the people who may not be for us, or who aren't sincere or faithful even, what it can also do is connect us to the spiritual dimension of life. And if Uranus's provocations since 2019 in the March, and Jupiter over the last year, what they've been really encouraging you to do is to become much more in touch with your capacity for healing yourself, or revisiting old painful stuff, or perhaps becoming more conscious of your vulnerability. So it doesn't have to always be that someone's up to skullduggery. So therefore, having that pack of energy in your 12th house could also be reflecting deeply about where you're going and how you can reset yourself. So Mars is giving you such a lot of determination and willpower in that link to Pluto. It's incredible. So you could have a discussion with someone that really inspires you. So if something does seem that it's heading towards an end, or there's a separation, or a wind down, or a retreat, or a withdrawal, just take that in your stride, because there's something else that's coming in that is just so exciting. And it could see you really moving into a very influential role, perhaps to do with your work, perhaps to do with your friendship group, perhaps to do with your own long-term interest. But getting in touch with what really gives you a sense of passion is really going to be important with that aspect. It's been a real pleasure being with you, Gemini. If you've yet to sub, please do so now. But have a great week and take care. Welcome, Cancer, to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 29th of April for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. On the screen now, I'm showing the event chart at the start of the week. This will be influential for the whole 7 days. And your ruler, the Moon, is in Capricorn, which for you is the 7th house. That's very much to do with where we relate and connect. But it's a more outgoing position for the Moon. You can also see the position of the Sun and the part of fortune are in the friendly 11th house. So it's possible that one association, connection, group, or one particular friend could prove to be really quite influential this week. But you can also see that Venus, the ruler of the sign of Taurus, where the Sun and the parts of fortune are, is just at the end of its journey through the sign of Aries. And you've probably had quite a lot of connections with people over the last few weeks, possibly to do with your work, where your personality power has proved to be important. But Venus moves later on Monday back into its home sign of Taurus, which on the face of it is going to be really good for your friendships over the next few weeks. But she does come into an immediate quarrel with Pluto in your 8th house. If there are some situations in your world where you do feel that you're a bit penned in, perhaps even connected to someone financially that stops you being a free spirit, that could be something that you're actively considering this week, especially because Mars, the planet of desire, moves to replace Venus in the sign of Aries. So Mars returns to Aries, which it rules. Venus returns to Taurus, which it rules. But Mars moving into Aries is going to activate that part of your personality which can be very much a leader. And over the next 6 weeks, if you've got key goals and ambitions which haven't quite manifested in the way you would like, you're really going to show a lot of drive and passion to try to realize those, particularly because Mars immediately forges a very influential link to Pluto. So Pluto can be good cop and bad cop for you this week. If there is a situation where you feel that your values are not meshing with someone and you don't see a longer term future in that situation, you could be carefully considering what to do. But if you want to make progress in a professional or entrepreneurial way, and you've got a clear idea of what your plan is, you could take a giant step forwards this week and be really quite dynamic. So it's an interesting week. Your communicational skills will be important. In a technical sense, the moon in Capricorn is at its weakest point of its journey. But I feel for you, it really can see you trying to look into situations, try to understand where people are coming from. But clearly, if there are some situations which don't suit your long-term plan, particularly around any kind of relationship, this may be a time when there could be some tensions or changes. It's been a real pleasure being with you, Cancer. Please do subscribe to my channel. Have a great week and goodbye for now. Welcome, Leo, to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 29th of April for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. On the screen now, I'm showing your event chart right at the start of the week. Now, we need to focus on your ruler, the Sun, and he's really shining in your 10th house. This is where you can raise your profile, be influential, but most of all, use your personality power to great effect. And the reason for this, Leo, is through the first 10 degrees of the sign of Taurus, the sub-ruler is Venus, which is the ruler of the sign. So that charm and diplomacy, which can be a big part of your nature, may have been really helpful to you over the last few days. But you can see that the part of fortune is very close to the Sun as well. But the Sun and the part of fortune also link to the Moon in Capricorn in a very practical way. So we've got a lot of earth energy here. So your ability to use your personality power, the determination you have to raise your profile, but also the way you apply your talents can be very systematic, and that can gain you approval. But you can see that Venus, the ruler of the sign of Taurus, is right at the end of her journey through Aries. Now later on Monday, she moves to join up with Taurus, which is a happy event for you, because that means that those skills you have interacting with people are going to be enhanced over the next few weeks. But there could be an immediate niggle. And the reason is, if you look at your chart, Pluto retains its place on your 7th house cusp. Now he's going to go into a retrograde on Thursday, which means relationships can be an area from then through to the start of September, which you really think very carefully about. And around a professional relationship, if you're feeling that someone has been saying something that's been a little bit synthetic and not entirely genuine, that can be teased out in terms of your understanding this week, because the Sun will move as the week goes on into the second decan, which is sub-ruled by Mercury. So no one's going to kid you around any details. And also because Jupiter and Uranus align so positively on the 21st of April and continue to be very close together through the first week of May, that really points towards you demonstrating not just your flair and confidence, Jupiter, but also pushing back a bit against the things that don't feel right for you, Uranus. So if it's in a personal situation that your partner doesn't understand your ambitions at the present time, or you're encountering a colleague at work who you don't believe is being quite as genuine as you would like, just keep your guard up somewhat, because there's also another sensational influence which develops on Tuesday. This sees Mars, which is a planet you have a great appreciation for because it rules your 3rd decan, and also the Sun, your ruler, is exalted in Aries, and Mars is the ruler of that sign. Well, Mars returns to Aries on Tuesday and will be there for 6 long weeks, but immediately forges a very dramatic but constructive link to Pluto, which we haven't experienced in any of our lifetimes across these two signs. So this is the first time for over 220 years that Mars in Aries has aligned to Pluto in Aquarius. And we could be talking about some really significant shifts societally, but for you, because of the fire of Mars being in Aries, suits your triplicity. If there is a political situation that you're encountering where you feel someone's not really playing fair, your drive and passion and determination to really show to them that that is not acceptable is going to be incredible. So there's a lot that you can bring to this week. You can raise your profile, you can be ambitious, you can have a great attention to detail. Your skills as a diplomat can be enhanced but not if you feel that one person isn't being straight. And therefore, the link between Mars and Pluto could see or give you the confidence to go it alone, to break out and do something, even if it is disruptive to that relationship or that person. And that can be quite thrilling. Also, Mercury, the planet of communication, now going forwards, forges a very helpful semi-sextile to Saturn. So if there is somebody that you can talk to who can give you some good professional advice, then that's certainly a person that you should be mindful of speaking to. So Leo, have a great week. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, I'd be grateful if you did now. But for now, take care and goodbye. Welcome Virgo to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 29th of April for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. On the screen now, I'm showing the event chart right at the start of the week, which provides us some clues of what you can expect. Now we need to be mindful of your ruler, Mercury. And Mercury, you can see, is very close to the North Node as this week begins. So trust in your instincts, but particularly around financial affairs, the 8th house, is going to be important. But also Venus, the planet of money, is coming to the end of her journey in the 8th house and is at 29 degrees and 24 minutes. But later on Monday, Venus moves into the sign of Taurus. And for you, that's a really lovely development. If you are going to be traveling anywhere over the next 2 or 3 weeks, it could prove to be a really enchanting experience. You could also find yourself talking to someone who comes from a different cultural background or different philosophy to you, which also can be enlivening. But because of the position of Pluto on your 6th house cusp, in a relationship, and it could be with a colleague, it could be within the family, any kind of connection with someone where you feel that you're trapped into perhaps giving more than you feel comfortable with, the collection of energy in the sign of Taurus, which of course shares your earth tropicity, is really encouraging you to express your freedom. And Venus will add to that, but because Pluto squares with Venus, if you do try to assert your right to be a bit more independent, particularly in a close relationship, someone could find that a bit difficult. But ironically, Pluto does forge an amazing link to Mars. And that's going to become really obvious by Tuesday, when Mars moves out of your sector of relating, where it's been in a muddling association with Neptune. Maybe there's been someone you've been drawn to over the last few days who may in some ways seem to have been really interesting, even mesmerizing, but you still may not absolutely know for sure where you stand with this person. But Mars is of course about action and returning to its home sign of Aries, where its sole rulership is very much to do with fire and energy, but in the 8th house, where your ruler Mercury is, suggests that if there are some business decisions to make or you need to transform certain elements of your life, Mars is going to bring much more thrust over the next 6 weeks. But he immediately forges a link to Pluto in a much more constructive way. Now this hasn't happened between these two planets across these two signs for over 200 years, so it's incredibly rare. Mars being in Aries is really in the mode to be more risk-taking. So if you want to improve your financial situation, for example, with Venus moving into the 9th house, perhaps you're going to be tempted to be more experimental, test out some entrepreneurial ideas you've been developing. But that link with Pluto suggests you could show a lot of determination to get more from the resources you already have. So maybe that could be moving some money around, something to do with savings and pensions and investments. You could make some very determined but shrewd moves with that combination. Now I just want to draw your attention to the midpoint, which is in Pisces, and that's just below the position of Saturn in house 7. So this week is still going to be important for relationships, and because the moon is in the 5th house, which can be to do with demonstrating our affection, if there is someone that you find really alluring and attractive, I feel the gathering of energy in Taurus, which for you has been evoking over the last 5 years a much more experimental side of your nature, and still having Jupiter there pretty close to Uranus. All that energy augmented by Venus suggests that if you are moving around, trying different things, experimenting over the next few weeks, it could prove to be a very encouraging and enlightening time. It's been a real pleasure being with you, Virgo. Have a great week, and if you're yet to sub, please do so now. Welcome, Libra, to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 29th of April for the ascendant, the sun or the moon. On the screen now, I'm showing the event chart right at the start of the week, which gives us a flavour of what you can expect. Now, first of all, we need to be mindful of your ruler, Venus. And she's coming to the end of her journey through your sector of relating. But she brings some complexity this week because being so late in Aries, she's therefore in a square with Pluto as we start the week. Later on Monday, she moves into your 8th house. Now, if you have been having a connection with somebody and it's going well, this could be the point that you go from the pleasantries to something much more meaningful. You can also get a lot more intense and sensual if that is part of the attraction. But conversely, Pluto squaring with Venus does suggest at the start of this week that there could be some politics, and it may be around a family relationship. And despite your best efforts to try to be even-handed, fair, polite, diplomatic, someone may still stubbornly be using some kind of leverage in order to essentially get their way or not be inclusive to your viewpoint, and that can really, really be tough. However, the sun at the start of this week retains its location in your sector of transformation, which is where Venus moves, and this in a more practical way is also about long-term finance, shared resources, can be to do with investment, property and business. And you can see the sun is very close to the part of fortune. So having Venus moving into the 8th house and into its second home sign after yours of Taurus suggests you could have some kind of dividend or uptick around your finances over the next 2 or 3 weeks. Now, the moon is in your 4th house, and of course the 4th house is an area that you've got very familiar with Pluto's support or perhaps attrition in recent years, but that's actually forging a very positive angle to the sun and the part of fortune. So if you are discussing a property matter, I actually feel that that can go well for you. Now, in terms of Mars is making the switch from Pisces, where it's been sluggish, into your opposite sign, replacing Venus. And this is a great aspect for you because it links very dynamically to Pluto for the first time in over 200 years. Of course, the sign of Aries is ruled by Mars, so Mars is coming home. And it's true in a natal chart, if someone has Mars in the 7th house, they can be quite firm about their side of a discussion or their needs. But I feel for you, this is a good counterbalance to Venus's tangle with Pluto. And what Pluto's saying is, look, the 5th house for you is where you can be really passionate, enthusiastic, and showcase what the talents and personality you have. So having Mars there as well, if there is someone that's really making your pulse race and you've not been quite sure what to do, this is very much an aspect of action, determination and willpower. And even if you are a little bit shy or reserved or fearful of a knockback, I think there is a chance you will make a move forwards. And it could be around a business matter. It could be around someone that you're attracted to. It doesn't have to be, however, only to do with a relationship matter. So Mars moving out of your 6th house, where over the last few days it has been affected by Neptune. Your physical vitality may have been a bit lower. By Tuesday, when Mars moves into Aries, you're really going to feel the fire that brings. And that's a great link with Pluto. Now, ironically, Pluto does go retrograde on Thursday. and it will be in your 5th house through to the start of September, when it inverses back into Capricorn for one last time. What will this mean? I think it's essentially Pluto going retrograde in your 5th house is asking you to dig deep, to quarry deep into what makes you special. You know, you're very talented at tuning into other people, understanding other people's needs, even presenting yourself in a way that other people are drawn to. But sometimes it's more difficult for you to really feel that you're manifesting or benefiting from your raw gifts. And I think that that retrograde just asks you to dig down deeper, and you can still exact more from yourself through to the start of September. It's been a pleasure being with you, Libra. I hope you have a great week. But if you've yet to subscribe, please help my channel and do so now. Welcome, Scorpio, to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 29th of April for the ascendant, the sun or the moon. On the screen now, I'm showing the event chart right at the start of the week. You've got a pack of energy still in Taurus, very much about relationships. It doesn't have to be just in a romantic context. It's how you're interacting with others and whether you feel that the attention that you're giving to, or care that you're taking with your interactions, is really appreciated. But Venus, the ruler of Taurus, joins up with the sign on Monday. Over the next few weeks, it could mean that you're going to have a significant connection to someone that could prove to be fortunate. But in a relationship you already have, you may feel that someone is not necessarily being quite as attuned to your needs as you are to theirs. Why? Because Pluto, your ruler, squares with Venus right at the start of this week. But Mars, your traditional ruler, is also on the move Tuesday into Aries, the other sign other than yours he governs. And here, this is going to be a big boost for your physical vitality. Now, he's also fortunately linked to Pluto, so you've got your two rulers are collaborating from Tuesday, and that's a very energized link. If there's anything that you've been wanting to achieve practically around your home, whether it's a do-it-yourself job that you've been putting off, whether it's something to do with your garden, whether you want to create a little bit more space, but you want things to just be working more efficiently, and you're going to have a lot of energy to make that happen. So that's really encouraging. Now, the sun at the start of this week is pretty close to the path of fortune, and both are linking well to the moon. So the moon is in the part of your chart to do with everyday conversations. This suggests that despite the tension that Venus squaring with Pluto can create, the chances are you could choose your words with great care this week and therefore be very effective. Essentially, Venus moving through the 7th house is one of her best transits. Yes, it can bring someone into our world, particularly if we're single, but it also gives us an opportunity to perhaps relax a little bit about something that maybe has been a bit tense, and it's easier to see one another's viewpoints. So that's why Pluto being there just clashes or distracts from that potential. But as the week goes on, and as the weeks go on, you will find that Venus will come back to you in a really constructive way. I hope you have a great week, Scorpio. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, I'd be grateful if you would do so and support it now. Welcome, Sagittarius, to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 29th of April for the ascendant, the sun or the moon. On the screen now is the event chart for you from the start of the week. This gives us a flavour of what you can expect. The big takeouts, you still have a lot of energy in the practical 6th house. The 6th house is a kind of Virgoan energy. It's about the details, sifting through things, trying to find greater efficiencies and organisation. The host, Taurus, is very much about money, but it can also be about food. So this may be an area that you're reviewing. Jupiter, your ruler, of course, is in this sector, suggesting that your natural enterprise can bring some new angles and new approaches which can be beneficial to you. Because the sun in Taurus is linking very well to the moon in Capricorn, having this very practical, precise approach can be of a great benefit to you. But Venus, the ruler of Taurus, is going to join the sign later on Monday. And when it comes to your work, or if you're applying for jobs, your personality, power and charm can be to your advantage over the next few weeks. It's just that right at the start of this week, Venus squares with Pluto. Pluto is the planet of power, of transformation, of course, and for you it is very positive in Aquarius. It is going to be going retrograde on Thursday of this week, but that square with Venus suggests that there could be a conversation where you feel that someone's tapping into your goodwill, but you may not be completely convinced it's to your benefit. Maybe it's more for theirs. However, Mars, the planet of passion, also returns home to Aries, and that happens on Tuesday. And he links with Pluto in an incredibly powerful way. Because you are a fire sign and Mars rules Aries, which is a fire sign, that part of your nature that does really come to life when you feel inspired by passion is really going to be triggered from Tuesday. So even if you are dealing with some more mundane matters with all that energy in Taurus, you can still bring your enthusiasm, your optimism, but your drive, which is the critical thing, to improve things, change things, or motivate yourself in a very potent way. So that's really exciting. That aspect between Mars and Pluto, between these two signs, not happened in our lifetime. So it's not occurred for over 220 years. I think Mars moving into Aries for the following 6 weeks is a great opportunity for you to feel more desirable. You know, whether romance and sociability are at the top of your list or not, we all like to feel that we're in good health and that we're giving out a good energy, and your energy can definitely be amped up by this combination. So if you are someone who is looking to interact more with other people, a very positive set of influences there. And of course, Mercury has ended its retrograde. It is still in its post-retrograde period, but it starts the week in a lovely link to the North Node. So your instincts around your creative talents and your expression are likely to be on the money this week, so do trust them. It's been great being with you, Sagittarius. Have a lovely week. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, please support it and do so now. Welcome, Capricorn, to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 29th of April for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. On the screen now, I'm showing the event chart at the start of the week. Now, the Moon is in your sign, and that's lovely because it's really urging you to be immediately mindful of what your emotional needs are. The first house is where we're concerned about us. It's more to do with our ego, if you like, but that's no bad thing. It links brilliantly to the Sun and the part of fortune in the joyful 5th house. So if you're wanting to pursue a hobby, interest, or even a social or romantic opportunity, listening to your gut feeling will guide you beautifully. But later on Monday, Venus is going to be joining up with the group of players in your 5th house, which includes the part of fortune and the Sun, and of course Uranus and Jupiter. The 5th house is where we can really showcase our talent. We can mesmerize people with our personality. Venus moving here suggests that your social diary will be filling up over the next few weeks. But because Pluto is in a square with Venus at the start of this week, you could also be tempted to spoil someone that you're drawn to with a grand gesture, or someone may in some ways give you a lot of attention, praise, or charm you. And it could be absolutely lovely and totally appropriate. But also it's important when Pluto's in the mix to just be conscious of what the motive is. But the other thing you could do with this square is decide to invest a little bit in your wardrobe, because Venus moving into the 5th house, very much about glamour. And having the Moon in the 1st house is about your identity. Perhaps a haircut is in the works too. There's been a lot of energy in your 4th house of late, which is very much to do with home, family, emotion. And Venus being in that area has been good if you have been redecorating or adapting your home or your outdoor space if you're in perhaps the southern hemisphere. But Mars hustles and bustles into this area on Tuesday. And of course, Mars being back in Aries is great in terms of the fit because it's the ruler of this sign. And for the following 6 weeks, it brings an extra intensity to your home and emotional life. But it also could make you a little bit prickly at times because Mars in the 4th house is technically in its fall, so it's rather like being in Cancer, and it can make us rather defensive. So just when you've got this cluster of very social energy developing in Taurus, which can really be lovely, just be aware that little things at home or in the family or people's attitudes domestically could be a bit triggering at times in a way which could surprise you. However, if you're wanting to do something to your home in a more practical way or even move altogether, the link between Mars and Pluto can give you an incredible amount of drive. And of course, you are a sign that generally makes your way towards your targets in a very step-by-step, methodical, hard-working, applied and patient way. But Mars being back in Aries can bring a little bit of impatience to the mix. So if there is something that's been put off, whether it is some adaptations to where you're living, perhaps you want to move altogether, perhaps there's something around the family dimension that you want to bring a greater sense of urgency to, you certainly have the toolkit there astrologically this week. But it is also the case that the 5th house can be where you can show people just how talented you are. And if, for example, you've got a skill that you've been enjoying developing, perhaps in your home life for some while, perhaps Mars moving into the 4th house, linking with Pluto in the 2nd, could point towards maybe doing something at home with a small enterprise. But whatever your desire is, that link between Mars and Pluto gives you a lot of determination. But having fun, enjoying life's pleasures, mixing and mingling, perhaps even with a romantic dimension if you're single, it's definitely possible with Venus moving into Taurus, its home sign, over the next 3 weeks. Capricorn, it's been great being with you. Have a lovely week. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, I'd be honoured if you'd support me and do so now. Welcome Aquarius to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 29th of April for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. On the screen now, I'm showing your event chart at the start of the week. Big takeout is that the Moon is in house 12 but links beautifully to the Sun and the part of fortune in your 4th house. Now these are emotional houses, 12 and 4. The instinctive energies of house 12 can be to do with our psychology. The 4th house is about our immediate environment, our emotional life. But they're collaborating perfectly. And I think what the Moon is saying, yes, you might be a little quiet as the week begins. I don't think it's going to last. But what it's essentially saying is be very practical about your emotional situation. But most of all, listen to any instinctive nudges you get. That's what the Moon is saying. Now you can see that Pluto still retains its place just on the 1st house cusp. And Pluto is going to be incredibly influential this week because later on Monday, Venus moves out of the 3rd house of your chart and into house 4. Now, if you've been thinking about redecorating, painting the outside garden fence, planting some flowers if you're in the northern hemisphere, or just getting busy around beautifying your abode, Venus gives you a great gift over the next few weeks. But it does clash with Pluto almost straight away. There could be a little bit of a tete-a-tete with someone in your emotional world. Perhaps someone who's not, perhaps, as you see it, appreciating your situation as much as you would like. Perhaps they're saying the right things, being very pleasant, but you may be somewhat suspicious of their sincerity. But don't worry. Because on Tuesday, Mars, the planet of passion, moves out of its sluggish link with Neptune and arrives home in Aries. Now, Aries is ruled by Mars, it's a fire sign, and over the next 6 weeks through to the middle of June, you are going to absolutely be on scintillating form. It may not show itself absolutely immediately because the gathering of energy in Taurus is very much about feeling. It's about pausing. It's about taking a breath, working out where you are, what your relationship to your environment, whether it's your inner world or the people around you. But Mars links to Pluto in your sign for the first time in over 200 years. Think of it, Pluto in Aquarius is very much about the big picture, how we're all connected and how we're all transforming societally, because Aquarius is very much about the group. But Mars in the third house is about your ideas. It's about the things that inspire you. It can be about movement. And this connection between these two is so energized. It's absolutely marvelous. So if you were wanting to do something around your home in terms of an improvement, decoratively, in the garden, or you wanting to interact more with people emotionally, your desire to make it happen is going to be very strong. So strident energies coming through. Mercury in Aries also forges a great link to your traditional ruler, suggesting that conversations you're having, possibly about money itself, maybe about a business situation, can develop well. And I think people are going to appreciate your personality power in a strong way, even if you come across as being, quite careful about your emotional side. People will see that there is a part of you that is worthy of their respect and notice. But Pluto does go retrograde on Thursday. It's going to go on for just over 5 months, through to the 14th of October. But at the start of September, it inverses out of your sign. So you get one final blush of Pluto back into the sign of Capricorn. Interesting, especially as this week begins with the moon in Capricorn, your 12th house. So the psychological domain, which has seen you evolve so powerfully over the last years, since 2008, when Pluto arrived in Capricorn, is going to be reactivated in the months to come. But remember all that you've learned. There could be some big changes coming for you. Maybe some things are coming to a close that have been quite reliable companions, maybe relationships, maybe interests, maybe even jobs. But what's being created is a new possibility for you. And that new possibility you will see from the middle of October is so exciting. But this link between Mars and Pluto certainly gives you a foretaste of just how much your vision, your passion, your ideas can really take centre stage, even if this week itself you may feel a little bit unsure and timid, but eventually the potency of that Mars-Pluto link will show itself in a very impactful way for you. Have a great week, Aquarius. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, please support the channel and do so now. Take care and goodbye. Welcome Pisces to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 29th of April for the ascendant, the sun or the moon. On the screen now I'm showing the event chart right at the start of the week. The big takeout is the midpoint between the sun in Taurus and the moon in Capricorn, which collaborate beautifully for you personally, is actually in your sign. So there's a big Piscean energy at the start of this week, not least by the fact that Mars, the planet of passion, is so closely aligned to Neptune, your co-regent. So your imagination is going to be very important, but your imagination can also be conveyed in a very powerful way, because Venus, the planet of relating, moves into your third house later on Monday. But it happens to be a sign that it rules. Yes, Venus returns to Taurus. And your charm and persuasion and skills as a communicator definitely going to be enhanced by Venus's transit through the sign of Taurus. It's just that she immediately clashes with Pluto in your 12th house. If there is an uncomfortable issue, something that's been simmering beneath the surface in a relationship. It could come out at the start of this week, and it could be a little bit uncomfortable. But Venus moving through Taurus gives you an opportunity to sharpen up your listening skills, but also make people aware that you do have your opinion and you can express it in a diplomatic way with Venus's help. Now, because the Sun, very close to the part of fortune, both link back to the Moon. Also, I feel the Moon in the 11th house helps you to be a bit more detached. And that means that when you're having a discussion, even if it is an awkward issue that comes up, you can be very fair-minded, I feel, in the way that this is picked through. However, Mars, the planet of passion, is about to leave your sign, and that happens on Tuesday. Now, just like Venus returning to Taurus, Mars' turning to a sign it rules in Aries. Mars in Aries is about fire, but it links to Pluto too, but in a very constructive way. Past skills, knowledge and experience that you've evolved over a long period of time can come back to you now in a very, very helpful way. Also, your passion can just come up from the depths. And if you're wanting to improve your financial picture, which may have come under pressure with Mercury's retrograde, maybe the solar eclipse flagged up something in terms of your value, whether in some ways you were thinking yourself down or perhaps were suffering from an imposter syndrome in some way. Mars moving into this area strengthens you, and it's going to give you a lot of determination over the following 6 weeks to get what you rightly deserve. So if there has been some stalling in getting the rewards or the return on something you've been working towards for some while, expect the green light to come soon. And that is really exciting. Now, your other co-ruler, your traditional ruler of Jupiter, still pretty close to Uranus. Of course, they came into that exact alliance across the 20th, 21st, depending on where you are in the world. And Jupiter in the third house, it's an interesting one because Jupiter technically in the third house, Gemini, is detrimented. So it's just saying to you, download as much information as you can. It's very close to Uranus, which of course is a disruptor in your third house in Taurus. It doesn't like being in Taurus. But together they can have qualities, and being very open-minded and gaining more information, which certainly Jupiter can be about, could help you to change your outlook in some ways. And that change of outlook can be very positive in how you can connect with people. If you are interested in technology or you work in tech, you know, you really can be inspired with Venus moving into this area. Your skills with neighbours, with siblings, you know, your ability to just interact and pivot well, you're a mutable sign, definitely enhanced once Venus gets beyond that tough right angle with Pluto. So a lot to go for really positively this week for you, Pisces. Have a great week. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, please support me and press that subscription button now.